Ladies and gentlemen, this is Good Morning KU on Monday, which means it's time for 10 at 10. Chasen is out having adventures in Europe, so I'll be taking the reins of the show for a couple weeks. We've got a full slate of college basketball and NBA on tap, plus scores and news from around the world of KU athletics. All that and more starts in 10 at 10 right now. The Kansas Jayhawks return home this week after the first weekend of the NCAA Men's Basketball Championship. They will not be leaving for Cleveland later this week. The Jayhawks went down to Wichita State 78-65 on Sunday, costing them a chance to take down Notre Dame on Thursday. Instead, the Shockers will face the Fighting Irish with a chance to, more than likely, play Kentucky in the Elite Eight. Speaking of the only undefeated team in the country, the Wildcats cruised through their first two games against Hampton and Cincinnati, winning each contest by double digits. They will take on the 5th-seeded Mountaineers on Thursday. West Virginia is one of the two Big 12 teams left in the tournament after the carnage of the first weekend. Baylor, Iowa State, Kansas, Texas, and Oklahoma State all failed to escape the first weekend. Baylor and Iowa State were victims of two of the most stunning upsets in the tournament this year, and Baylor ended up falling to a team that, for a few short days, became the darlings of the NCAA tournament. After Coach Ron Hunter tore his Achilles tendon celebrating with his team, Georgia State went on to beat Baylor on a buzzer beater, scored by none other than Hunter's son, RJ. Coach Hunter fell off his chair in excitement and fell right into all of our hearts as his team became the ultimate Cinderellas. Unfortunately, the slipper couldn't fit for another game as the Panthers went down to Xavier in the round of 32. Kansas became the second 2-seed to lose on Sunday when they fell victim to the dynamic backcourt of their in-state rivals. Wichita State's three top guards, Ron Baker, Fred Van Vliet, and Evan Wessel, combined for 41 points and 18 rebounds on just 28 shots. Kansas guards Frank Mason, Wayne Sullivan, and Devontae Graham, on the other hand, combined for 33 points, 8 rebounds, and 4 assists on 29 shots. The team had just 8 assists and 14 turnovers, 5 of them by Frank Mason. Every Shocker starter ended the game in double figures, and they needed just 8 total points off the bench, 7 of them from Zach Brown. Despite grabbing 14 offensive boards, Kansas bigs combined for 23 points, 9 of which were free throws by Perry Ellis. Our tweet of the day comes from the one, the only, Dickie V. Vital had, in fact, 2 great tweets reacting to the Kansas loss on Sunday. As you see, he had a lot of praise for Bill Self and what he did this year. Let me say this, Coach Bill Self did an amazing job this year to win Big 12. This was not a vintage Jayhawk team, hashtag Dickie V picks, and I think we all could agree. But of course, Dickie V is not afraid to speak his mind about the Cinderellas he always loves. His second tweet took a look back at Wichita State's historic W. Magical moment for Shocker Nation takes away pain of losing last year to UK. W over Kansas is a real hoops hysteria feeling for Wichita State. UK being, of course, Kentucky, hashtag Dickie V picks. Now, a lot of people disagreed with what he said, but I think that's pretty fair to say. Later on the show, we'll have Scott Chasen on to break down the ins and outs of the matchup that he was at in Omaha this weekend. While our eyes were on, of course, KU basketball over the weekend, other KU teams were in action nearing the end of March. The softball team has been nothing short of extraordinary this year, and they showed it again. They're undefeated at home, and they stormed through the Rock Chalk Challenge this past weekend, beating Eastern Michigan, UMKC, and Georgia State twice. They outscored teams 31-14 on the weekend. The Jayhawks now hold a 29-2 record on the season overall. Coach Megan Smith also recorded her 300th win as a Kansas coach on Sunday after the Jayhawks' 5-4 win over Georgia State. Here's what Coach Smith had to say about her accomplishment.
You know, 300 wins, it's awesome. You know, I've been a part of some great programs, great players, great assistant coaches. You know, it's really the players that go out and play hard for me. It's not about me, and you know, really proud to do that here at Kansas because I'm really proud to be a Jayhawk and proud to be here at KU.
For a Fantastic Five, we've got a fantastic performance from men's golf, who won their first title since 2013 after dominating the Desert Shootout this past weekend. The Jayhawks finished 8 strokes ahead of the second-place team, which was Iowa State, and every golfer finished in the top 20 at the event. Kansas led after every round of the shootout. Next, Jamie Bermel's team sets its sights on the Old Waverly Collegiate Championship in West Point starting April 6th. It's a Super 6, and right now Kansas baseball could use a Superman. The Jayhawks did improve to 9-14 after a 4-7 start, but they lost 2 of 3 games against the Hawkeyes of Iowa over the weekend at Hoagland Ballpark. After winning the front end of the series 4-3, the Jayhawks slipped up on Saturday and Sunday, getting outscored 12-6 in the 2 losses. Kansas has one last tune-up game against Missouri State tomorrow before beginning conference play on the road against Texas Tech. You know, I'm a college basketball guy, and all my attention was wrapped around the tournament this whole week. But after KU and Virginia lost and completely obliterated my bracket, I decided I'd better look at what's going on in the professional level to stop myself from crying. Well, Russell Westbrook is still tearing it up. If you remember our last show, which was 2 weeks ago, Jackson and I broke down his amazing run of triple-doubles. Well, it's still going. The point guard from UCLA now has 10 on the season, an unbelievable number, considering he was injured to start the year. Elfrid Payton also decided he better go off as well just to keep pace, and the rookie from Louisiana Lafayette recorded 2 straight triple-doubles last week. He's the first Magic player to accomplish that feat, the first NBA rookie to do it since Antoine Walker in 1997, and just the 7th rookie ever to do that. The Warriors are still disgustingly good, by the way, and they hold a 7.5 game lead over Memphis in the Western Conference. Oklahoma City sits in 8th in the incredibly tough conference, and with Kevin Durant still being shut down indefinitely, they'll have their hands full holding off the Suns for that last playoff spot. Now, I could say we've gotten a Elite 8 in honor of the tournament, but I'll go another route. That's just too easy. One of the NBA's greatest point guards in the last 30 years called it quits this past weekend, so our 8 is extraordinary, just like Steve Nash. The future Hall of Famer spent 19 seasons in the NBA with Phoenix, Dallas, and Los Angeles. He's a career 49% shooter, averaged 14.3 points and 8.5 assists per game, and won 2 NBA MVPs. He also averaged 17.3 points and 8.8 assists in 120 NBA playoff games and shot 43% from 3 in his career. He retires as one of the most respected and exceptionally unique players in the last 3 decades. You know, soccer is a thing, and Sporting Kansas City is one of the more talented soccer teams in all of America. This past weekend, Sporting KC attempted to rebound from their disappointing 3-1 loss at FC Dallas against Portland. The team returned to Sporting Park for the first time since their season-opening draw to the Red Bulls. The result was a 0-0 draw to the Portland Timbers, meaning KC still have yet to capture that elusive first win. Their next chance comes Saturday against New York City FC at Yankee Stadium before they return home to face Philly and Real Salt Lake to begin April. Now, you know, I'm a big soccer guy and I love the MLS, but we know what I love more is all the soccer that happens in Europe. You know, I have a podcast, EPL from LFK. It's on kjhk.org. You know, we do it every week, and you know, we really love breaking down European soccer, and especially the BPL. And right now, the Champions League is really starting to heat up. It's in the quarterfinals. They just had the draw, and we have some really, really interesting matchups. There's 4 of them that'll decide who plays in the semis. It's PSG and Barcelona, Atletico Madrid and Real Madrid, Porto, Bayern, Juventus, Monaco. Now, between those 4, I love the Atletico and Real matchup. I really think that, you know, Atletico, they may have lost something when Diego Costa left the team, but, you know, when it's a rivalry game like that, a derby, I mean, you can just throw everything out the window. You know, I mean, it's just so much fun to watch. And obviously, PSG and Barcelona, 2 of the giants in terms of European soccer. And then Juventus, Monaco. I mean, 2 teams that you wouldn't really expect to see in the quarterfinals, especially Monaco beating Arsenal. Speaking of Arsenal, English teams have, in the last 5 or so years, have been historically bad at the Champions League and really in all of Europe. European play. And I think a lot of that is due to where they play in terms of, you know, they play each other. And in England, they get a lot of chances. I mean, the defense allows a lot of chances. You know, it's a really back and forth game. So it's the most attractive kind of soccer to watch. But elsewhere in Europe, you don't get those kind of chances. You know, you don't really get, you know, maybe 10, 12 opportunities to score every game. Whereas in England, you do. And so English teams are not used to having to be clinical every shot, whereas teams like Barcelona, PSG, you know, teams like that, even Porto from Portugal, they are used to having to be clinical and making the best of what they have, you know, about 5 shots a game. And so I think England in the last couple of years has really fell victim to not being able to, you know, be clinical with their finishes, even though they do have the best players in the world. So I think if England and if English teams want to be successful in the Champions League, they have to become more clinical on the offensive end. And with the strikers they have, it shouldn't be too hard, you would think, with the talent. Teams like Chelsea and and Manchester City, teams like that have all the opportunities to win. In the BPL, the race is starting to heat up. Chelsea is starting to pull ahead there at first, but Manchester City, Arsenal, and Manchester United are all within 2 points of each other, down at 2, 3, and 4, as you see the table here. So Chelsea's starting to pull away, but that race right there, the 2, 3, and 4, I know that all those teams would be guaranteed Champions League spots, but if Chelsea were to slip up, all of those teams theoretically have a chance to catch up with the leaders and the giants in the BPL right now. And so at the end of the league, with it coming to us, just a couple months away, I really think this could be an incredibly interesting BPL season, maybe one of the most interesting that we've had in the last couple years. Probably won't be, Man City scoring 2 goals in the 90th minute on the last day to win the title, but you never know. Stranger things have happened. Later on the show, actually next segment, we've got Scott Chasen on. He's a Suns guy, and so obviously we're going to have him talk a little bit about Steve Nash and how much of an impact he thinks Nash has had on the NBA. And of course, he's also the KU men's basketball beat writer, so he'll be talking about that as well and their loss to Wichita State. Plus, we've got news, as always, what's going on in the Union, and some special spring break photos, so join us after the break. Welcome back to 10 at 10, and we welcome in Scott Chasen. Scott, you've been on almost every sports show we have here. I mean, this is one of the last ones I think that you haven't been on yet.
Yeah, I even went on KUE News, so I've been just about everywhere.
You've been everywhere, not even sports. Well, Scott, you're a writer for the Valley of the Suns, and you've been a Suns fan for most of your life, correct? Mm-hmm. So when Steve Nash decided to hang him up, you probably had, I guess, maybe not mixed feelings, but I bet you were a little bit sad about.
Yeah, definitely. It was a little bit disappointing, as it is whenever you see a great player retire, especially a player you grew up watching, one of the first. Steve Nash, for me, got me into the game. So, it was sad, but it was a long time coming. I don't think anyone's shocked by this. The guy's 41 years old. He's, he's certainly done it all. He's had a great, lengthy career, and I think that's kind of his lasting impact. At age 30, I want to say 38, he averaged 12 points and 10 assists per game. That's the lasting impact of Nash. It was funny, he ran down his averages, and you think 14 points, 8 assists. That's not that great, but it's about how he was able to do it over a long period of time and how he was able to make his teammates better that really defines his legacy.
I mean, that is a career average. He's had a 19-year career, so I think that's pretty impressive, even if it's not the 20 and whatever.
Yeah, and even his first year, he wasn't scoring. He was playing spot minutes. He was the 3rd-string point guard on his team. And then the next year he was the 2nd string. And this last year in Los Angeles, he's seen these last few years in Los Angeles, he's seen very few spot minutes, which does drive it down.
Now, when you talk about players, some of the greatest of all time, a lot of times you think of rings. You think of Bill Russell with double digits. You think of Michael Jordan. Steve Nash doesn't have one. Is that going to tarnish his legacy at all when we look back at him?
That seems to be the question, surrounding his legacy. If whether or not him winning a ring really hurts him, because he's actually the only MVP that is not currently playing to never make a finals appearance. So there have been others that haven't won a championship, but he's the only one there. But in the playoffs, I think you just look at the guy. The Suns have had a lot of things work against them. They've had a refereeing scandal. They've had injuries, Amari Stoudemire specifically. They've had, suspensions. There was a game where players left the bench, got suspended for the end of the series, and that kind of cost the Suns against the Spurs. But if you actually look at his performance in the playoffs, he's had some memorable ones. Take his, I want to say 2004 or 5 series against the Mavericks. He averaged 30 points, 12 assists, 5 rebounds per game, shooting 100% from the line, or 96% from the line. He was, he's certainly done it all. And 2010, another one where he's 36 or 37. He sweeps the Spurs in 4 games, and the 4th of which he gets elbowed in the eye. It's gushing out blood. He has it stitched up. He actually couldn't see out of the eye, so he's basically like wearing an eye patch. Comes back in the 4th quarter, scores 10 points. Goran Dragic was great in that series. He mentored him, and I think you see that in a lot of guys. They have a lot of respect for him. Guys like Steph Curry came out with statements. Everyone he's ever played with seemed like they had something to tweet. So, I think despite the rings, there's still a very good legacy there.
Now, you also, in your spare time, beat writer for the University of Daily Kansas for men's basketball. So you were in Omaha since Wednesday,
Yes.
Covering that. And when they went down to the Shockers, I'm just curious what your reactions were. I mean, was it an expected thing, or did you kind of get the sense that they threw that game away?
Well, there were three of us down there, two beat writers and our sports editor, Blair Shade. And we were kind of talking about that we didn't like the matchup because we felt that Perry Ellis wasn't at 100%. The team said he was at 100%, and he certainly was saying he was healthy, but you could tell right away he's laboring out there. It took him a little while to get going, and even though he did have a nice game, he didn't have the type of impact that he could have had. We're talking about a 6'8" guy who was being guarded by 6'3" Evan Wessel. He very easily could have scored 30 points that game at full strength. And I also think you look at Cliff Alexander, another guy who would have had his way inside. Wichita State got a ton of shots at the rim. He would have just had to stand back and swat shots. And Bill Self always loves when one guy stands in the paint there because no defensive 3 seconds. So I wouldn't say it was expected for them to lose. I thought it was expected it was going to be a very close game. And I think in the end it was a disappointing result, but I wouldn't say anyone was too surprised.
Now, you wrote an article in the UDK comparing Frank Mason and Fred VanVleet, and we kind of discussed it. The predominant perception is that VanVleet is a better, point guard. But in the article, the stats compared very favorably in terms of Frank Mason. Just kind of break that down a little bit.
Definitely. And, when you start off, you have to remember Frank Mason isn't, a quote-unquote true point guard.
Right.
He never played it before he got to Kansas, and he was kind of put in that position because of the concerns about depth. Connor Frankamp was in the same boat there with Nadir Tharp running the show that year. So basically what the article looked at was, basic per-game averages. Then it looked at advanced statistics. It looked at strength of schedule. It looked about percentages. It looked at just about everything and found the numbers were incredibly consistent. For example, in the best 4-game passing stretch, they were within 1 assist of each other. I think it was 29 and 28 was their best 4-game stretch. Scoring was the same story. Each had long stretches of 10-plus point games. VanVleet was a little more up and down. Mason was much more consistent. 20 games in a row scoring 10 points is certainly nothing to scoff at. And, in the end, when the numbers match up that evenly, you look at the schedule. Wichita State had the 120th strength of schedule in the nation, playing 3 ranked or top 25 RPI teams. The Jayhawks played 14 top 25 RPI teams. They beat 9. Wichita State played 11 top 100 teams. So they had almost as many wins versus the top 25 as Wichita State had games against the top 100. So just looking at that, it kind of showed that Mason could take advantage. And I think in the end, just about anyone you ask would say that matchup was a wash. I think both guys got their points. Both guys affected the game. And certainly I don't think that's why Kansas lost.
Right, I would definitely agree. I think Evan Wessel had a huge impact on that game. I mean, I'm just curious about what you think. We saw the tweet from Dickie V, and he said this isn't a quote unquote vintage Kansas team. Now, you've been a basketball guy for a long time. Did you think this was a vintage Kansas team, or is this something different that Bill Self has managed to build?
Well, for this to be a truly vintage Kansas team, I think there needed to be a 7-footer. And there wasn't one. And I think when Cliff Alexander was coming in, everyone had this idea that the impact would be similar to that of Joel Embiid. He would dominate the paint on both ends. Whether or not the body type's obviously extremely different. But I think that was the idea of the similar impact. And it's not something that happened, obviously. He was playing well in the midseason, got put in the starting role, had some foul trouble, still was more effective than any other Kansas big man not named Perry Ellis. And then the suspension comes. So I would say this is not a prototypical team, although Frank Mason does kind of embody that combo guard because Bill Self likes the 1-2.
Yeah, he
but
does.
And maybe even similar to Sharon Collins. Their numbers matched up pretty similarly from Sharon's senior year and his sophomore year here. But even then, I wouldn't say it was prototypical. The shooters, there were more streaky shooters rather than consistent shooters. There weren't really like Tyrell Reed and Brady Morningstar out in the wing.
Right.
You had Brandon Green who got red hot for a very brief stretch, and then for the rest of the year was actually, I don't think it's overstating to say it was pretty bad. And he was a subpar shooter for about half the year, but he was also the best shooter in the nation for half a year. So, I definitely wouldn't say it was prototypical.
Scott Chasen, a man of many titles, Valley of the Suns, beat writer for the UDK. Scott, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Anytime. We've got news and, of course, those spring break photos all coming up on Good Morning KU. Stay tuned.
KU. Hi, I'm Tom Skoke.
And I'm Sam Yola. This is your Good Morning KU News Update. Texas Senator Ted Cruz has announced his intentions to run for president in 2016. The Republican Party is seeking to take over the White House after 2 failed bids for election to the nation's highest office. Cruz represents the Tea Party and is initially expected to face challenges from former Florida Governor Jeb Bush and current Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker.
The state of Mississippi is calling on the FBI's Special Behavioral Analysis Unit to help with a recent lynching case. 54-year-old Otis Bird was found hanging from a tree in Claiborne County last Thursday after being reported missing for 2 weeks. Officials are waiting for the official cause of the death to be released, but are treating the case to be as criminal.
The father of Singapore's independence has died at age of 91. Lee Kuan Yew served as prime minister for 31 years and oversaw Singapore's separation from both Great Britain and Malaysia. Although he was criticized for his iron grip on power and restriction of free speech, he was widely respected and will be given a state funeral next Sunday.
Missouri State University officials are looking for a naked man on campus. The Springfield campus has received several reports of a man wearing only a ski mask exposing himself to female students in the dorms. The suspect has twice eluded police officers, and although he is not considered to be dangerous, the university is urging female residents to keep their doors locked at all times.
Local residents will be happy to hear that Westar Energy will be sending out rebates to customers. The electric company collected $38 million too much last year and will adjust its future billing to include an average rebate of $1.26 per month.
Spring break is now officially over, and that means it's time to get back to your studies. Students are reminded that there are now just 7 full weeks of school remaining, with stop day occurring on May 8th. Registration for summer and fall semesters begins this week as well.
And now I'll wrap it up for today's news update. Stay tuned. We'll be back with Elizabeth to talk about spring break.
Where you go to college makes a statement about you. This place will become a part of you, your identity for life. The University of Kansas, a great place to be you.
What do you mean? What do you mean my mocha's not here? I'm Ben Allen, seriously. What about here? Is that better? Oh, now my arm's disappearing. Obviously, this is even worse. Make sure you tweet at us at 3InKey on Twitter. I don't know where else you would tweet at us, but you should do that because I'm lonely and I need friends. Please follow me, Ben Allen Sports. It'll make your day better. Probably not. It'll make mine better though. Literally. I'm back again on Good Morning KU for 3 weeks. I'm going to be coming in, analyzing those teams, telling you what you need to know and why you need to know it. Because I know things. We're going on a trip and our favorite rocket ship. Follow me on that Twitter thing, Ben Allen Sports. So March Madness is coming up. Why am I wearing a Ravens shirt? Because I am a loser. Signing off. Konnichiwa. I'm back.
And we're back. Spring break is officially over, but we haven't talked about yet. I haven't seen you in probably like 2 weeks. How was your spring break and where did you go?
My spring break was good. I went to Phoenix and I went to Tucson for like a night. But
that's right, you saw my cousin Tommy in Arizona. I told you last week or 2 weeks ago to look out for him.
Yes.
Did you see him?
I did not see your cousin. It's a big school, but I'm sure it would have been fun if I had seen them. But no, Arizona was good. It was warm. It was warmer than usual, actually. It was like high 80s, so it was nice.
Do you see any rattlesnakes?
I did not know, which wouldn't have been uncommon if I had, but I didn't know.
I'm not a snake person. I would have been scared crapless. But I went to California, Huntington Beach.
Wow.
Just look at that handsome guy right there on the surfboard. It's a classic surfboard picture. We surfed every day. I took a tour of Warner Brothers Studios in LA for a day, and it kind of relaxed on the beach the entire trip, and it was good. My back is so burnt. It's unbelievable. It's like straight red to white. So yeah, I might be peeling in the next couple of days here.
I think
so. I have to moisturize quite a bit. But other people of the crew went to different places for spring break. Pictures show like Tom went to Nebraska for the high school state championship.
Fun.
Yeah. Here's Danny. Of course, she's working the baseball games, softball games. She didn't have that much of a spring break. She went to Texas for 3 days, but she was on the grind, on that work grind. Griffin, of course, went to Colorado, back to his home state, which is an awesome state. I love Colorado. Not as good as Wisconsin, but, I mean, Colorado's still pretty decent.
Colorado's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, spring break is over and school must go on, so what to expect for the Union this week?
Well, not a whole lot going on. Kind of a very sad ending to the basketball season yesterday, but little hint of good news. The bookstore, we have a sale going on, 30% off in-store and online through Friday. Just a little fan appreciation sale.
Yeah,
so that's
we
nice.
deserve it.
Yeah.
After that emotional loss yesterday.
Yes, definitely.
Oh.
So yeah, that's about it.
Well, that'll wrap it up for today's show. Tune in tomorrow, same time, same place. Have a great day, Kansas.